The winter wind howled outside as the automatic glass doors to the Midtown grocery slid open with a faint hiss. It was just after sunrise, and most of the city was still wrapped in a cold, sleepy silence. But inside that grocery store, a storm had already started. The man in a dull blue jacket and worn khakis walked slowly past the produce section, his cap pulled low, eyes scanning everything. He wasn't just any shopper. He was the CEO of the entire grocery chain, Undercover. And in aisle 5, near the checkout, he saw something that made his heart stop cold. A young cashier, no more than 21, stood trembling behind the register. Tears streaked down her face, silent and raw, as she tried to hide her sobs. But then came the words, whispered, broken, yet piercing through the noise like a scream, "I wish I didn't have to come here anymore. I wish I just disappeared." If you believe in kindness, in second chances, and the power of small acts to change lives, please like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, comment your thoughts below, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel Rapple of Hope. Your engagement helps us tell more stories that heal and inspire. The undercover boss, whose name was Jacob Myers, paused, his stomach sinking. For years he'd built this company with pride, telling himself it provided jobs, opportunities, and a future for thousands. But in that moment, watching that fragile soul barely keeping herself together behind a plastic counter, he felt an invisible weight press down on him. Something was broken, deeply broken, and he had to find out what it was. Jacob didn't approach her right away. He stood near the newspaper rack, pretending to look over the headlines, but his mind was racing. He had entered the store just an hour into his week-long undercover mission. He expected to uncover inefficiencies or bad managers. He never expected this. The cashier's name tag read Emily. She had soft features, tired eyes that had seen too much for someone her age, and her movements were robotic, the kind you only see in someone who has given up, not just on a job, but on life itself. He watched as a customer grew impatient, slammed down a crumpled coupon, and muttered something unkind. Emily flinched. Her hands shook as she scanned the items. She apologized, not once, but 3 times, for something that wasn't even her fault. Jacob felt his throat tighten. This wasn't the kind of store culture he had envisioned. Something had gone terribly wrong in the system he built. For the next 2 days, Jacob worked in the store, posing as a new trainee in the stock department. He cleaned aisles, lifted boxes, helped customers, and watched. Emily arrived early every morning. Her uniform was always neat, but her eyes carried the weight of endless sleepless nights. She barely spoke unless spoken to. Other employees avoided her, not out of hate, but the kind of uncomfortable avoidance people use when they don't know how to handle someone else's sadness. Her manager, Dave, was stern, efficient but cold. He rarely said more than what was necessary. Jacob noticed that Dave often gave Emily the worst shifts, had her handle difficult customers, and once even scolded her publicly for taking an extra minute in the break room. It was on the 3rd day that Jacob finally found a chance to speak to Emily during her 10-minute break. She sat alone outside on the concrete steps behind the store, eating a plain sandwich in silence, her coat thin and frayed. He sat down beside her, offering half of his muffin. She hesitated, then nodded slightly. They ate in silence until Jacob gently asked, "How long have you been working here?" Emily answered quietly, 8 months. "Since my mom passed away." That single sentence opened the door to a story that shattered Jacob's heart. Emily had been in community college, studying nursing. Her mother, a single parent and cancer survivor, had relapsed and died within 6 months. Emily dropped out to pay for rent, bills, and her younger brother's school supplies. She worked full-time, barely making ends meet. Some weeks, she skipped meals to buy his textbooks. Other nights, she slept on the couch because their heater broke and she wanted him to have the warm room. Every dollar went somewhere. Every day was survival. Jacob sat frozen. This wasn't just a sad story, it was a mirror, showing him everything the company had failed to see. Employees like Emily were not just laborers, they were warriors, silently fighting battles that no one acknowledged. And the company had no systems in place to support them, no mental health resources, no emergency funds, no real human connection. It was profit over people, and the cost was written in the tears of a 21-year-old cashier. That night, Jacob couldn't sleep. He stared at the ceiling of his hotel room, replaying her voice, her expression, her final words from the break, "I don't think I matter to anyone here." He had built this empire on the dream of uplifting others. Somewhere along the way, that dream had faded behind spreadsheets and boardrooms. The next day, everything changed. Jacob cut his mission short and returned to headquarters. Within a week, a full investigation into store management practices began. Policies were reviewed, and new ones were implemented. Each store was mandated to set up an employee support fund. Mental health counselors were contracted. Schedules were rebalanced, and strict rules against mistreatment by both managers and customers were enforced. But most of all, Jacob returned to that store one last time, not as an undercover boss, but as himself. He walked in wearing his suit, a quiet strength in his steps. Employees froze. Dave turned pale. Emily stood at the register again, startled to see him. Jacob approached her, and for a moment, they just looked at each other, two people from opposite sides of a broken system, meeting in the middle. He handed her a letter. Inside was a full scholarship to return to nursing school, along with a paid part-time position at the company's corporate office, in a new department Jacob had just created, Employee Advocacy and Wellness. Emily's story had become the blueprint for change. Tears rolled down her cheeks, but this time, they weren't from despair, they were from disbelief, gratitude, and the overwhelming feeling of finally being seen. She whispered, "Thank you, for not walking away." Jacob replied softly, "Thank you for showing me what I needed to see." And with that, the grocery store didn't just become a better place to work, it became a symbol of what can happen when we choose compassion over convenience, humanity over hierarchy, and heart over haste. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, and comment below. Your words might inspire the next person fighting a silent battle. And if you haven't already, subscribe to Rapple of Hope, because the world needs more stories like this.